Welcome to this webinar, which provides insights into assessment with a focus on parents. These insights take account of research and are drawn from inspectors' findings in early learning and care settings, as well as the guidance provided by inspectors to settings to promote improvement. This webinar aims to support you as a parent to understand what assessment means in your child's preschool education and the role you can play in supporting their learning and development. When you hear the term assessment, you might think back to the different tests and exams that you undertook during your days in school. You may also think of assessments at different stages of your career or employment, or even medical assessments. Assessment in early educational terms, similar to primary and post-primary education, is developed in line with the relevant curriculum. So to truly understand assessment, it is important to firstly understand the curriculum approach. The curriculum advocated through the Irish Early Years Curriculum Framework, ASTER, is a play-based emergent curriculum. This emergent curriculum is planned from observations of the children, giving the early years practitioners an insight into the children's interests. Early years practitioners working with your child will observe your child's strengths, interests and needs. They will reflect on and discuss their observations with their colleagues and with the children to figure out what to do next to support learning in a way that is meaningful and exciting to your child. If we look to this early years curriculum framework, ASTER, to understand assessment, we will see the following definition. Assessment is the ongoing process of collecting, documenting, reflecting on, and using information gathered to create a rich picture of the children's learning and development, to demonstrate current learning and plan for future development. This webinar will look in more detail at why assessment is important to your child's learning and development and how information is collected, documented and used to progress your child's learning, all the while highlighting the important role you can play in supporting your child's learning journey and providing you with examples of effective practice that was observed during early years inspections. What does our guide to early years education inspections say about assessment practices? The guide advocates for a variety of assessment approaches to be used to regularly gather information and progress the next steps in your child's learning journey. So, how will assessment benefit your child's learning and development in their early education? Inspectors comment regularly on the wide variety of approaches that are used to capture children's learning experiences on a regular basis. This will create a rich picture of your child's learning. Early years inspection reports often note how the warm, supportive interactions between the early years practitioners and the children and rich documenting of the children's learning experiences provide for ongoing feedback about their learning, which motivates them for future learning. Where effective assessment practices are identified by inspectors, the children will be provided with challenging, progressive and enjoyable learning experiences. In effective early learning and care settings, inspectors will see that reflections on your child's interests, strengths and needs will positively inform plans for their future learning. As your child's primary educator, your role in their learning and development is extremely important. Inspectors often advise parental engagement as a means of celebrating your child's learning as a collaborative process between the child, the early years practitioners and you, their parents. The following slides will delve more deeply into the assessment process by describing the methods of assessment and how you as a parent can play an active and meaningful role in its development. I'd now like you to consider for a moment about the way in which your child's learning might be effectively assessed and supported during their time in early learning and care settings. What is the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe written or oral tests, questioning, reports. In fact, it is actually the early years practitioners' daily interactions and conversations with you, with your child and with you, that most effectively support and complement all assessment practices. Inspectors commend the implementation of a key person approach, where each child is assigned one key practitioner who is responsible for capturing the voice of their key child through observations and documentation, building and supporting the relationship with parents and families, and facilitating regular two-way communication about their child's learning and development. By observing your child while he or she is playing, the early years practitioners can see your child's interest and development. Inspectors will note that information observed about children's actions, non-verbal gestures, and creative expression, such as mark-making, art, and music, as well as their conversations and interactions with their friends, inform plans for exciting and meaningful activities. Observation is particularly important for capturing the voice of the child who communicates non-verbally through gestures, facial expression, and specific communication systems such as PECS or LOV. Through conversations, the early years practitioners can listen carefully to what your child is saying and use questions to understand what your child is thinking and feeling and why. Why do you think that happened? Speaking with your child about an observed interest can delve deeper into how it can be developed to support their learning. Why do you think you chose that toy? Is there any other ways we might use it? Conversations are important when supporting the child to self-assess their own learning. The early years practitioner might help your child to develop the language and skills to discuss, make sense of, and plan for their own learning. They may use prompting questions like, what would you do differently if you were doing it again? If your child uses PECS, LOV, or other communication systems, the practitioners can encourage your child to self-assess effectively through these means. Some inspectors have noted how well some children engage with different communication systems during early years inspections. The early years practitioners may also choose to organise strengths-based tasks and activities to support the development of specific skills through planned experiences that are exciting and meaningful to your child. So we now know how and why assessment is important to your child's early educational experiences. So what can you as a parent do to support this process? Over the next 2 slides, we show you many ways you as parents can find out about your child's learning and development and support their progress. Many high-quality early learning and care settings will eagerly welcome your knowledge and information about your child's learning and achievements at home. Firstly, we will look at how you might receive and respond to this information during conversations and discussions, both formally and informally, with early years practitioners. Informal conversations. Inspectors often know during inspections that the early years practitioners and the parents engage in frequent, often daily, informal conversations at drop-off and pick-up times. These friendly chats support relationship building between you, the parents, and the practitioners who work with and care for your children. This helps the practitioners to really get to know you, your child, and the wider family. It provides time for two-way informal sharing of your child's learning progress and development. This final element is particularly relevant and critical to effective assessment and information sharing. Formal meetings. Some early learning and care settings plan to arrange meetings with you throughout the preschool year. They might be at the end of the year or the end of terms, this Christmas or Easter. This meeting will give you an opportunity to sit down with the early years practitioner and discuss your child's learning in a safe, quiet space. Observed by our inspectorate, very high quality provision recorded the inclusion of the child in a meeting about their own learning. This practice ensures the learning is rich and meaningful to the child. Early years inspectors often detail the many ways that early years practitioners document, record, and share information with parents in written form about their children's learning and development. In many effective early learning and care settings, the early years practitioners will support you to review and discuss this documentation. Inspectors note that some early learning and care settings explore the records with parents during the previously mentioned informal and formal meetings. Others may encourage you to review them at designated times, such as the end of term, end of school year, or during an open evening. These written records help to tell the story of your child's individual learning journey. The adult notices and documents important points about what your child can understand, can do, and how they approach learning. He or she also sometimes records in more detail about your child's involvement in particular events or activities in order to create a fuller picture of the richness and complexity of their learning and development. Documented assessment will be written in a positive manner, focusing on your children's strengths and not what they can't do. If your child requires help in a particular area of development, documentation will detail how the early years practitioners plan to support your child going forward. Adults and children use this evidence of learning to celebrate progress and achievement and to plan the next steps in learning. For some families, documentation provides critical information in helping to identify special educational needs, in putting appropriate supports in place, and in reviewing the impact of these strategies. This slide aims to provide you with information you need to recognise and review the written records of your child's learning and assessment. While evaluating practice in early learning and care settings, inspectors regularly see wall displays showcasing the children's learning experiences through photographs and written descriptions. These may be linked to Ashter, and accompanying them in high-quality settings, inspectors will see the children's own thoughts captured and future plans for development. Also displayed on the walls, inspectors often see samples of the children's individual artwork, and sometimes they see descriptions voiced by the children. To capture your child's individual learning, inspectors often note that early years practitioners create learning stories through pictures, descriptions, and ideas for future learning experiences. They are sometimes contained in a scrapbook, in a folder, or in a learning journal. Inspectors affirm the effective storing of such information, which when put together creates a record of your child's learning journey, showcasing your child's progression in a positive and colourful way. In high-quality early learning and care settings, these records of learning should be freely available for the children to explore at all times. Group learning stories are developed in the same way as individual learning stories, but are based on playful group experiences. In some early learning and care settings, inspectors will see this group learning stored in a group learning journal, and in many settings they will be displayed on the walls. Children engage in so many creative experiences through painting, cutting, gluing, and free mark making. Inspectors often note that samples of this work are stored in an alternative designated safe space, such as a folder, scrapbook, tray or drawer, or on the walls of the early learning and care setting. Your child will love to share their work with you, and it provides another way for you to review their creative progression and current interests. Communication books. In some instances, early learning and care settings might use communication books to record information on your child's learning and development to share with you on a regular basis, often daily or weekly. Technology for early learning. Technology is frequently used to communicate information with the parents about their child's learning and development. The most common methods recorded by early years inspectors are email, electronic messaging, private and groups, and social media. Some early learning and care settings now use specific computer programs that have been created especially for early learning to capture and share information about your child's learning and development. You may receive updates about your child's learning through these digital systems directly to your mobile device. Discussing and providing the early learning and care setting with feedback on your child's learning might seem quite natural to you during conversations and face-to-face meetings. However, inspection reports from effective and highly effective settings often describe creating the opportunity for parents to contribute in writing and commenting on their child's learning records. Engaging with such opportunities gives you the chance to influence and support your child's development by providing information and advancing their learning experiences. This can really help you to build on your child's out-of-home experiences while at home, and so linking what happens in preschool with the home environment, making learning more enjoyable and successful. Here are some links to resources which we think may be informative for you as a parent of a child attending an early learning and care setting. This brings us to the close of this webinar, and we would really like to thank you for listening. We hope it provides helpful advice. If you have direct queries or comments arising from your engagement with this webinar, please use the dedicated email address provided to send your comments to us on assessment_info@education.gov.ie. Thank you.